All right, continuing on. So we've got valid input now. We know we will never get out of this loop unless we've got an odd or an even. Okay, so we've got the valid input. We've got they're calling whether it's an odd or even, right? And now we need to do what? Well, now we want to ask what they want to throw, an odd or an even. Okay, so ask for throw. System.out.println which number would you like to throw? Odd or even? Okay, and then we're going to read their throw in, and I believe we called that user throw. Now, could we have them say, or could we say to them, enter a 1 or a 2, 1 for if you want to throw 1, or 2 if you want to throw 2? Yeah, you could. I'm just doing this so I can prove a little point here, or not prove a point, but teach a little lesson. And the lesson I'm getting at is that it'll have to do with the computer's choice. So for now, let's read in whether they want to do odd or even. So I'll say in.next line to read in their choice whether it's odd or even. Okay, and then that's going to be stored. Well, again, I'm going to need to check for valid input. And so I can do this exact same thing again. Now, I almost was tempted there to cut and paste, or copy and paste, but whenever I do that, it seems to end badly. I forget to change something. Like I probably would have forgot to change user call there. I might have changed it here and here, but not there, and then that would mess up the program. So in my mind, again, we're going to check for valid input. And actually, truthfully, I'm seeing I'm doing the exact same thing twice. That tells me this should be in a method somewhere, and I should be calling that method. So maybe we'll address that later on in the program. But for now, I'm going to try and keep it kind of simple. So it's going to be the same thing, though. So while the user throw input is not equal to, so equals ignore case, odd, and not user throw dot equals ignore case even. So while it's not one of those two things, then I'm going to say system.out.println, sorry, that was not valid input. Please try again. Okay, and then I can read in their new input, user throw equals in dot next line. Now again, you'll be bugged because you're saying, well, I could have just copied this. It would have been so much faster. Believe me, in the long run, you'll save more time by just typing it, so you don't make that mistake. And notice I didn't even look at the other one. I'm writing it completely new because I can't tell you how many times I've spent trying to solve problems that it came from copying and pasting code. Okay, so now we've got valid input for that. Well, now we need to make a random choice for the computer. Okay. And so how do we do that? Because what we're going to generate for the computer is an odd or an even, right? But the computer, how do we generate a random string? Right? How do we say, just like we've done with the random numbers, how do we say random string? Well, sometimes in programming, the easiest way is just kind of the simplest way. We don't know how to do a random string. But can we get a random number? Yeah, we know how to get a random number. Once we have a random number, can we decide on a string based on that number? Well, sure. And so let's do that. So what I'm going to do is get a random number. So I'm going to create one more variable here for the computer throw and call it the int, what do we want to call it? CPU random number. Okay, just set it equal to 0 to begin with. And this is just a temp variable to decide CPU throw. Okay, so what we're going to do then is come in here and get a random number. So we're going to set this CPU random number variable equal to a random number. Well, how do we get a random number? Again, in this class that we built, there's no random. Well, we can use the math.random, but I'm going to use the Java util random. So this is a class that's sitting out in the Java system memory, and then I like to kind of compartmentalize everything, keep everything together. So because I'm building objects here that are system objects, I'll probably just build the random right next to that, even though I could build it anywhere down there. I could have put that line down here somewhere. But I do like to kind of group together when I'm declaring my variables, and if there are different variables for different sections, sometimes I'll group those together. You just want to make this thing really easy to read for whoever's going to look at it next, which could be you in a couple months. You're looking at your own code and you're saying, oh, what was I doing here? It's much easier if everything's kind of grouped together. I could have declared all these variables just when I used them down the code, but then it becomes very hard when you're debugging to find where the variable declaration is. It's nice to have them all up in one group. Okay, so I've declared my random number generator. Again, random is the blueprint, and I've said go out and build me one of those that I'm going to call R from now on. And so it goes out in memory, builds you a random class that is referred to as R, or an instance of a random class that we refer to as R. Well, now down here, I can say, let's take that random number generator and get a next int out of how many is what we pass in the parenthesis. Well, we only really have two choices. We have a odd or even. And so we've only got two choices, and that will give me a 0 or a 1. Okay? Well, can I make a decision based on that now? Yeah, I can, because I can say if that CPU random number came out to be a 0, then do what? Well, let's set the the computer throw equal to odd. And then if the computer random number equals a 1, then set the CPU throw equal to even. Again, I could have used a what am I trying to say here? An else statement. But again, if for some reason I accidentally put a 3 here or something, if I would have used an else, then it would still be saying the computer's throw was even, and there would be a mistake in my program that I wouldn't catch. And so I'm safeguarding myself against myself by just using two if statements. If the user's the computer throw comes out to be blank, then I'll pick up on that error quicker than I would if I had an if and an else. And so it just depends on the situation. You just got to be careful, I guess is what I'm saying. There's no hard, fast rule for that. It becomes a matter of feel. Okay, so we've made the random choice for the computer, and now we need to decide who wins the round. Okay? So we're going to do that through a series of if statements. We've gone in and we've picked so the user's picking odd or even, and then we ask them whether they're going to throw an odd or an even. Okay? So I guess the only thing I'm thinking is really, what does odd or even mean the second time? So when we ask it the first time, we're saying, was the outcome going to be odd or even? But really, the user picks an odd or an even. That they're just picking a 1 or a 2. Do you want to pick a 1 or a 2? And then the computer is going to pick a 1 or a 2. And so I guess the dilemma I'm having here as I look at the code, I wanted to do this to show you how we could generate a random string based on the choice. But eventually, we're going to need to add the user's choice together with the computer's choice in order to get the total and then decide whether it's an odd or even number. Now we can do that through if statements by saying if the computer chose odd, and maybe that's the easiest way to do it. If they both chose odd, then that means that the number is even. If one chose odd and one chose even, then it's an odd number. I guess that's easier than I was thinking. Okay, so we're going to need to decide who wins the round. But before we can decide who wins the round, we need to decide, or can we do it all at the same time? See, I'm going to come back and watch this later and realize that there was a much better way to do it. But when it's in the pressure of the moment and trying to do this, I'm trying to decide which way would be best with this, because what I'm going through in my mind is we need to be able to say whether the number was odd or even now. In our pseudocode, we've just said if the user picked odd and the number was odd. The question I'm having here is how do we determine whether the number was odd or even? And we can make a messy if statement. We can say if the user call equals ignore case odd and the user throw was odd equals ignore case odd, and the computer throw equals ignore case even. So I picked the outcome to be an odd number. The user throw was odd, the computer throw was even, then we do get an odd number. Then I could say, yes, now the computer wins, or the user wins, sorry. And then I could go in and increment the number of computer wins. Why do I keep wanting the computer to win? The user wins. We've got this variable for user wins up here. So I could say take whatever was in that variable, user wins, and increment it by 1. So this is one way I could do it, but then I'd have to do that for each scenario. If the user picks odd and the user chose even and the computer chose odd, it would still be a user win. Alright, well, let me think this over for a second, and I'll come back in the next video and try to work this all out in what might be the best way to do this. Spencer out.